lovely and darling viewers, it's Jen here at Check Her Joy, and this time I'm doing a book tag. This is the Do I Have That Book tag or challenge, which was created by Keeping Tabs. I will link the original video in the description below, as well as list the questions. This is originally supposed to be a book challenge where you time yourself, which I didn't end up doing. I did that once, and it was so awkward and I absolutely hated it, so I just went through and found books in my collection that I own that match these topics. Additionally, I challenged myself to only pick one book by an author or in a series. So they're not all going to be Doctor Who books, even though I own like 2.5 shelves of Doctor Who. Question 1. Do you have a book with deckled edges? And the answer to that is yes. I have Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. This is a collection of retellings of Norse myths. And I don't know if you can see the deckled edges, but it's that uneven edges there. I really love this edition. Part of it's the deckled edges, part of it's the rubbery cover, some of it's just the illustration. Question 2. Do you own a book with 3 or more people on the cover? This one was kind of hard, but I do. It's Hidden Figures by Margot Lee Shetterly. This is the movie tie-in edition. It's the main actresses who play the 3 main, I don't want to say characters, because this is nonfiction, the 3 main people that we're following, who are all NASA scientists, African-American NASA scientists, who played huge parts in the space program. So it's based off of Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson, and Katherine Johnson's real lives. Number 3, do you own a book based on another fictional story? I do. It is Heartless by Marissa Meyer. This is a prequel to Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. So this one tells the Queen of Hearts story about how she became the Queen of Hearts and follows her as she goes from young Baker who's in love to the woman who will become the heartless, evil Queen of Hearts. Question 4 is a book with a title that is only 10 letters long, and I did find one. It took a while, but I found Geekerella by Ashley Poston. This is a modern retelling of Cinderella that does its own thing. It is so geeky. It is like a love letter to sci-fi conventions and fans of sci-fi shows. It's amazing. Question 5, a title that starts and ends with the same letter. This is another one that took me a while to find. And the one that I found is Sister Freaks, which is by Rebecca St. James. This is stories of women who gave up everything for God. So this is a nonfiction collection of biographies of Christian women who are martyrs, who gave up everything for the cause of Christianity. This is a response to Jesus Freaks by DC Talk, which is just in general anybody who's a Christian who died. But this one just focuses on some really kick-ass women, which I love. But number 6, do you own a Mass Market Paperback? Gee, I wonder. Actually, I own several. It's actually pretty much a favorite method of mine. Like, I love how small they are and how easily they fit in purses. It's great. And they're pretty cheap. So the one I picked is Monster by A. Martinez. This is a fantasy novel in which we have a young woman working in a grocery store or something, and she finds a Yeti in the freezer, which then introduces her to the main character of Monster, who is a cryptobiological containment and rescue services officer. So basically, he's animal control for all the mythological creatures in this world. Anyway, it's really quirky, really fun, and I love like the adventure aspect of going into this fantasy world and seeing all the different creatures in there. Monster's also got a really interesting personality. A book with an author using a pen name. It took me a while. Like, I know I have several of them, but the one I picked is The Bad Beginning, which is the first book in a series of unfortunate events. It is by Lemony Snicket, but the author's real name is Daniel Handler. So Lemony Snicket is the narrator of the book. Like, he's telling it from the perspective of this character named Lemony Snicket, who is chronicling what happened to the Baudelaire orphans as their parents have died in a fire and they are getting shuffled from new caregiver to new caregiver, while the evil Count Olaf is coming up with plans to try to steal their fortune. It's amazing if you have not read the series of unfortunate events. It's got this really great gloomy undertone to it. Lots of really horrible things happen, but it's also kind of fun and entertaining and inspiring as the orphans have to always constantly outthink Count Olaf and rely on themselves. It's amazing. Number 8 is a character's name in the title. So I picked Daring Do in the Marked Thief of Meritport. This is a My Little Pony novel. It is written by G.M. Barrow as A.K. Yearling, who is the author of the Daring Do books in the show. So, in the My Little Pony universe, in the show, the really, really big children's adventure series that everybody's obsessed with, it's kind of like the Harry Potter of their world, is the Daring Do series, which is about this Pegasus who goes on all these adventures trying mostly to save artifacts. And she's up against like these evil villains. She's very much like Indiana Jones if he was a pony. They are so much fun, so much adventure. I love the way that they fit into the universe, as in these are books that actually the main characters of the show would be reading. And in fact, Rainbow Dash is super obsessed with them. So I love them. I love the fact that we have them and they like exist in our world and we can read them. All right, number 9, a book with 2 maps in it. This one was actually pretty easy because I remembered using the maps from it, and it is Artemis by Andy Weir. This is his follow-up to The Martian, although it is not the same. It's different. Here are all our maps. This is of Artemis. This is the lunar colony where everything takes place. So the premise of this is that we have a colony on the moon, and it exists in all these domes. They're all interconnected, and we have people who permanently live there, although it's mostly like a tourist attraction. Lots of rich people coming to take vacation on the moon because they can. But our main character, Jazz, grew up there, and she's a bit of a little con artist. She's not the utmost character, but I love her. She's got this great voice that is so much fun to get into her life. There's a mystery going on and kind of a life-threatening situation because, you know, you're on the moon. So if anything goes wrong with your oxygen, you're all dead. And Jazz has got to use her unconventional ways to figure it out, what's going on and how to stop it before everybody on the moon dies. So lots of science. It's funny. It's got a similar tone to The Martian. Okay, question 10 is a book turned into a TV show. Yeah, I've got several of them on my shelf. But the one that I picked is Dead Until Dark by Charlene Harris. This was turned into the television show True Blood. So in these books and the show, we have the main character of Sookie Stackhouse, who is a telepath. She can like read people's minds. And one day, this vampire walks into the diner that she's working at, and she discovers that she can't read the minds of the vampires, so she's like drawn to them. And actually, the vampires start finding her super useful. They're like mystery books, so each book there is something that she's got to solve. But my favorite part is actually the world of the vampires, how they're out in society. Everybody is just learning that there are vampires. There's this new synthetic blood substitute that they could use instead of having to like kill people to eat. Question 11 is a book written by someone who was originally famous for something else. So before they became known for this book, they were a celebrity for some other reason. So the person I picked is Trevor Noah. He is the host of The Daily Show. It's a comedy news program. So hilarious. And the book that he wrote is Born a Crime. This is his memoirs about his life in South Africa during and I think just after apartheid, towards the end of apartheid. But Trevor was born to one parent who's black and one parent who is white at a time when that's illegal. So he's literally, the fact that he is born is a crime. And he talks about living kind of not really in either world, where he's not fully white, but he's not fully black either. Talks about his relationship with his parents and his grandparents, and going to school in South Africa. It's really an interesting look at everything that was happening with apartheid and with race relations in South Africa. Really gripping. But he is a comedian also, so there is kind of this funny conversational tone to it, which keeps it light and entertaining at the same time. Not that some of it doesn't get really dark and really deep, but like the overall tone is still conversational. All right, number 12 is a book with a clock on the cover. Somebody else had picked Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. Technically, Big Ben is there in the background, but I really hate using somebody else's answer. The problem is I couldn't find another clock that was not also in the background, barely there, on any of my book covers. Like, I found tons of gears and stuff and a few like watches, but like not clocks. It was super frustrating. So I actually picked Mort by Terry Pratchett, which has the hourglass on it, which I kind of like a little more. It's a type of clock. Mort is set in the Discworld universe, and it follows the character of Mort, who becomes an apprentice to Death, the Grim Reaper. And I love it. I love Death in general. Like, anytime Death shows up in the Discworld novels, it's amazing. But to actually like see where he lives, he kind of lives outside of Discworld in his own little place. So Mort's living there. Do you own a poetry book? I don't own many, honestly. I have Shakespeare sonnets and I have Edgar Allan Poe, and then the only other book I can think of was Modern American Poetry. This is actually a ex-school book that I picked up somehow. I don't even know how I picked it up. But this one was originally added to the library there in November of 1969, and the last checkout date on the card was from November of 98. So it's an older book. But it's a textbook with tons of different American poets from like the 50s going back, which I love. So there's like Carl Sandburg, Robert Frost is in here, T.S. Eliot, E.E. Cummings. So it's a good mix of a lot of notable poems. And I'm not really a poetry person, so it's good, I think, to just have one book with some of the big names and the big poems in it. Number 14, do you have a book with an award stamp on it? I do. It is A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. I mean, I probably own others, but I just did a review for the second book in the series, so I remember seeing the Stonewall sticker on it. So the Stonewall Award is for LGBT books, and the main character of The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue is Monty, and he's bisexual. So I love this book so much. It's an adventure story. So we have Monty, who's this aristocrat, and he goes on his tour of Europe to try to get all his wild oats out. Especially his dad wants him to stop flirting with the guys and come back ready to settle down and marry a woman. So Monty and his best friend Percy and Monty's sister Felicity all go on this world tour. However, things don't go as planned. There's like pirates involved. It's a super fun adventure story with a bit of a mystery in there. Great diverse cast. The sister Felicity is asexual, and the best friend Percy is half black. Basically, he's black, but he's raised by his father's family, this rich white aristocrat family. But Percy also has epilepsy, which makes things complicated. So tons of diversity. Also just really, really fun. All right, author with the same initials as you. My last name starts with an H, so I had to find a JH, and I did in James Harriet. This book is all things bright and beautiful. This is one of his memoirs about, so he's a British vet. So out in the country, his stories are kind of pastoral, lots of animals. But my favorite part is that it got turned into a television show in the 80s called All Creatures Great and Small that has Peter Davison in it, who was also the fifth Doctor in Doctor Who, which is how I started watching in the first place. And the show is just great. I haven't actually read the memoirs yet. Kind of just saw them at the library book sale and was like, yeah, I'll take that book. I just haven't gone around to it yet. Number 16, a collection of short stories. This one's really short. I picked Tales of Beetle the Bard by J.K. Rowling. These are 5 fairy tales that exist within the Harry Potter universe. So These are books that, well, Ron Weasley would have been reading as a kid. It does have The Tale of Three Brothers, which is featured in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, but it also has 4 additional fairy tales. They also all have commentary as written by Albus Dumbledore about each of them and their like significance. I love both the stories and Dumbledore's commentary, so it's so much fun. I love it. I love fairy tales and then I love Harry Potter, so this is like a great mix of both of them. 17, a book between 500 and 510 pages. So hard. So hard. I had a bunch of books that were like 450 and a bunch of books that were like 540 and I didn't think I was going to find one, but I did. It is Doctor Who 50th Anniversary Collection, 11 Doctors, 11 Stories. So this is from Doctor Who's 50th Anniversary. This has 11 short stories. Each one follows one doctor of the first 11 that were, out at the time. It has some notable authors like Neil Gaiman wrote one, Patrick Ness, Ian Colfer. But the reason why I picked it is that the last story ends on page 501. So as long as you don't count the author bios, we're good to go. I haven't read the whole collection yet. I have read a few of these. Like, I know I've read Nothing O'Clock, which is the Neil Gaiman story, but I haven't sat down and read all of them. 18, a book turned into a movie. Also a category that I have a ton of these things for. But the one I picked is Beastly by Alex Flynn. This is the movie tie-in cover, so you can tell it was a movie. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling set in a modern New York high school. So the main character in this, it actually follows the Beast's perspective. So the kid is Kyle, and he's absolutely vain, absolutely awful to everyone. He thinks he's gorgeous and important just because, his family has money. He's running for class president just for the having the title of class president, not because he actually wants to help his classmates. Kyle ends up getting transformed into this beast-like character. Actually, in the book, he looks more like the Beast of Disney's Beauty and the Beast, where he's hairy and wolfish. Graphic novel. I actually had a bunch of books that ended up being collection of comics that I really wanted to count, but then felt like they were actually comics and not a coherent graphic novel. So the one I picked is Hatter M, Looking Glass Wars Volume 1 by Frank Bedore, Liz Cavalier, and Ben Templesmith. This is another version of Alice in Wonderland, but in this story, Alice was actually originally from Wonderland. She was this princess. So the evil Queen Red has Alice's mother killed so that she can take the throne that was rightfully hers anyway. She tries to kill Alice, but Alice escapes into our world. While she's there, she befriends this author who ends up writing the story Alice in Wonderland. But these graphic novels actually follow Hatter Madigan, who is the Mad Hatter. But he's a royal bodyguard, and so he is charged with finding Alice in the real world and bringing her back to Wonderland. And so there are actually 5 graphic novels following Hatter as he goes through our world trying to find Alice, and he keeps looking for this imagination, which is kind of like magic, but it's this glow of intelligence and creativity. And all throughout our world, he keeps finding people who have tons of imagination, hoping that they'll be Alice, and then finding out that they're other people. So inventors and artists. So this one's really interesting. I also really love the art style of it. Looks kind of like paintings. Find a book with 2 or more authors. So the book I picked is Night of the Living Trekkies. This is by Kevin David Anderson and Sam Stahl. This is a zombie story set at a sci-fi convention, specifically for Star Trek. So I did find all 20 of these. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of them. Do any of them not count? Do you own any of these books, or do you have books on your shelves that also fit these categories, or might have fit them better? The clock one was kind of weak. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video. I'm going to try to do more book tags and things that aren't just book reviews and Top 5 Wednesdays. Kind of gotten stuck into a habit here, trying to break that. So yeah. Peace out. I love you guys, and keep reading. Bye.